Hello. So, on my last video, I mentioned that I'd worked on various games, one of these being Still Wakes the Deep. I worked on Still Wakes the Deep back in the years 2020 and 2021. This was during my time at the Chinese Room. For those not familiar, the Chinese Room often develop games which are more focused towards emotional storytelling and exploration. When I first started my career in the games industry, I was a sound design intern, and I had the honour of working on Still Wakes the Deep during its pre-production phase. Although I was at the studio when the game released, I had nothing to do with the production or the post side of things. This video will be focused around this game's pre-production phase, what it was like to work as an intern and as a junior sound designer, and kind of get my bearings as to what the industry would be like. During the first 6 months of the project, I was the only sound designer at the Chinese Room. This meant that I had to learn on my feet and develop critical skills at an early point in my career. Although now, looking back, I would improve a lot of things that I'd done, I thought it was worth sharing some of the early takes and visions we had on Still Wakes the Deep, or Habitat as it was called back then. And although I didn't have much experience, it was amazing to work along such talented people and just kind of get a feel for what a beautiful game this is. And that's the thing, although I didn't have much experience, I gave everything that I'd done in the pre-production phase, everything that I had. I learned quickly on the job and just really tried to make everything as best as it could sound. I want to commend the sound team for the release of Still Wakes the Deep, and especially the studio because what they put out is a masterpiece. I just thought it would be interesting to look back at early iterations and potential ideas of how the game felt in those early days, so this is what this video will be about. I'll show some concepts from like mood boards, early gameplay footage from early builds, and just some work that I'd done on some traversal things. But nothing's that groundbreaking, but I thought it was worth sharing anyway because looking back, it made me feel quite proud to actually have helped in some way. So first, we'll take a look at some mood boards. When I first started, I remember seeing these grotesque concepts on the studio walls, and immediately they were really striking because, as horrible as they looked, they were also very beautiful. And that's when I started to discover the influences of the game very early on, that being Annihilation. On one of these days, we were due to watch Annihilation, and I had no idea what it was, so I went in with a full lunchbox and food, and I remember hardly touching the food because it gave me such an uneasy and unsettling feeling that it kind of just completely distracted me. We would also watch Midsummer and various other inspirations like The Thing, just to kind of get that kind of feeling over towards the people making the game. And those three references were noticeably the most important for me: The Thing, Annihilation, and Midsummer. My main takeaway was to make the audio sound uneasy, but beautiful at the same time. I remember our Dan Pinchbeck at the time saying it should be that horrible that you can't take your eyes off it, even though you really want to look away. And that really drove my inspiration for a lot of the sound design. I loved this part of the project because it was creativity on full throttle. There was no idea too ambiguous or weird. We could just kind of throw everything we wanted at the board. I thought it was worth mentioning at this time that we didn't really know what the entities would be on the oil rig. So at this moment in time, it was kind of just, we didn't know if it was going to be an ethereal or water type based kind of creature. But one of the main ideas I had early on, as you'll hear in these examples, is that perhaps this is similar from what Annihilation done, that the entity that we come across on the ship could somehow replace sounds that it hears and like speak back in like a sound language. So it would hear metallic creaks from the rig, and through its like vocal cords it would just repeat those sounds like it was trying to communicate because it didn't understand how to. Obviously this changed in the final game, but it was an interesting concept at the very start. So with that, let's take a look at some of the early concepts I had and mood boards. So when I look back at these, I kind of wince in my chair a little bit at certain ideas that I had. Bear in mind that I probably only had around three months experience at the studio when I was doing these. I didn't really have like a lead to kind of turn to. This all came from either the concepts, the creative direction, or even design of just like what this rig could have on it. But actually, looking back, it isn't all that bad. I think I had a really interesting idea for the bodies that had exploded, and they would have some sort of like ethereal, magical tones. The direction I was given was that the rest of the rig should sound like a horror space, but when you get closer to these bodies which have been kind of erupted from within, that it kind of is like a cathedral in a sort of way, like a very peaceful place, which I thought was a really cool idea because it contrasts the idea of what you would see. So yeah, looking back, very strange, but it was kind of interesting to look back on. And next we have the horror. We didn't know what it was going to be, so there was ideas that it was going to be electrical, water-based. It was all just up in the air, so it was very hard to kind of get some ideas down. Yeah, looking back, I'm pretty happy with how these concepts sound. A lot of them are pretty over the top and maybe sound a bit crap, but I'm pretty happy that I only had a few months experience and was kind of trying all these crazy ideas out. Okay, so next up we have some early demo footage around March 2020. This was used to kind of show the game off to external publishers and just get overall interest. So yeah, let's have a look. love looking back on those clips because it was my first time in Unreal Engine and integrating Wise, and yeah, it kind of fills me with a lot of joy looking back. As I mentioned earlier, it's interesting to look back and just reflect on. I had no experience, didn't really know how to balance or mix things, so it was an interesting opportunity to just get thrown into the deep end and kind of just make what I could. And this was before using any kind of aka spatial volumes. For those who don't know what that is, it's Wise's kind of system for building out rooms for specific ambiences, portals for sounds to come around corners. So really, I think it was all just emitter placement. Yeah, so I can look back at it and go, oh god, I would change this, I would fix that now. Obviously, I would now, got more experience, but yeah, I think it's really interesting to look back on work that you've done in the past and reflect within yourself to see how you've grown or what you do different now. Yeah, so next up we have a touchstone scene. So after, this is probably a year later, maybe around December 2020 or January 21, the idea of this was to kind of do a benchmark art scene with final audio to see how the rig would sound with the machines during the day, and we can just kind of take a look at that. I think this is using the spatial system that I kind of had been researching back then. Yeah, let's take a look at that as well. So as you can see, that was a lot more refined there, a lot more focused on the ambience and the inner workings of the rig. I think my main reference for this was Monster House. It's an old animation film. It is interesting because the film portrayed this house, which had an entity of a person living within it. So it had lungs, it was able to breathe. So that was one of my biggest inspirations for this, was imagining the rig breathing, something happened in the distance. Yeah, it was a lot of fun, and as you can see, from a year on, I start to get a bit more experience of actually mixing and making things a lot more balanced. So next up, before I was moved off the project in 2021, I'd done some work on traversals to improve the sound of the Foley and just the general mantling throughout the game. These are early videos of me just demonstrating them, so it's kind of interesting to look back on and see what my approach was going to be for the actual traversal systems within the game. So let's have a look at that then. So here's just another quick video explaining how wetness could work. It's fairly simple. Essentially, just if they say a character jumps in water and their stamina and everything's really low, they've only got like 25% oxygen or that left, they would become really wet. So when they came outside, this is what the footsteps would sound like. Say they spent a long time, so it'd be quite soaking, and then as time resumes, if they're out of water, this counts from 0 back to 0, 100 back to 0, so it'll start to fade to about this, and then 50, 25, and then eventually dry. And this isn't just for footsteps, this could drive, say, like the cloth movement of the character. We could probably link in some breaths for the temperature, but this is just a quick example to show that. So this is just a quick demonstration of the traversal sounds I've been up to. We'll start with the walking. So try to make them sound quite weighty with some belt sounds, and obviously it's rig uniform movement sounds. These played vary differently depending on what you're doing. So crouching, it's more taxing and less belt shakes. And there's obviously running as well. So that'll be really nice to the players, how much noise they're making, because obviously they're wearing big steel toe cap boots and stuff. Next will be the climbing that I've been working on. So I've added some clambering sounds for the movement underneath. You hear the feet and the cloth movements. I think it'll be nice when we get some breathing in there, because it'll get a nice rhythmical movement sound. And obviously there's the mantling. Although the animation is still work in progress, there is sound for them. Just some nice cloth sounds. Jumping's obviously, I want to get in some sort of differentiating sounds for how fast you're moving will make a different sound based on your velocity, and that's the same with the water. The water is much work in progress, as a lot of it's getting worked on right now. So the actual enter and submerging sounds a bit quieter than usual because we're still tweaking some values on that. So we've got some generic swimming sounds. And then the underwater climbing. These actually did have water movement sounds, but there's been a bug recently, so we decided to leave them out because it would play underwater sounds on top. So, but we're close to figuring out that as well. And then there's the dash, which I'm quite happy with. This is a placeholder sound. It sounds like you're pushing yourself off. And that is basically it. And you've also got the different water sounds if you put your head up above water and then under. But yeah, the next moves will be to get some sort of nice values and a nice underwater system that'll play different sounds, and some sort of wetness as well for how long you stay underwater. But that's okay, and that's the end of the traversal examples I have. It's been a lot of fun looking back on my early work on Still Weeks Deep. When I actually look back, I'm kind of really sad I got moved on to a different project, because I would have really loved to have seen this through to the end. Although I'm happy to have contributed in a small way in the pre-production phase. I thought it was just really worthwhile to look back on. I refound all these files on my PC, and it kind of made me happy, and I really just wanted to reshare some of the early work that I had done on the project. The final game's amazing. If you haven't played it, it's on Game Pass, so there's really not an excuse to not try it. But yeah, that'll do for now. I'll leave you with this funny picture of me doing some underwater placeholder breaths for Kaz during that demo phase, and it's really cool to look back on how I started and where I am now. Yeah, thanks for watching, and see you next time.